Hi and welcome to True Crime, a channel dedicated to the dark underworld of criminal activity carried out by gangsters, mobsters, cartel leaders, and others. In this video, we'll be comparing two of the most infamous drug lords in history, El Chapo and Pablo Escobar. Join us as we explore their rise to power, criminal empires, and eventual downfall. Let's get started. Early life of the drug lords. Let me tell you about a man who went from selling oranges to being one of the most notorious drug lords in history. His name is Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Lora, but you might know him as El Chapo, which means shorty. Born in a poor family in rural Sinaloa, Mexico in 1957, El Chapo had to find ways to make money to support his large family. His father was a cattle rancher, but it wasn't enough to make ends meet, so El Chapo began selling oranges. But he didn't stop there. At the young age of 15, he started selling marijuana, and by the time he was 20, he was working with Mexican cartels. This rags to riches story is a testament to El Chapo's entrepreneurial spirit and willingness to take risks in the illegal substances industry, where the potential for profit was much greater than working in the fields for $2 a day. Now, let me introduce you to another infamous drug lord, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. Born on December 1, 1949 in Riongro, a small town near Medellin, Colombia, Escobar had some striking similarities with El Chapo in his early life. His mother, Hermilda, was a school teacher, and his father, Abel, was a cattle farmer, just like El Chapo's. However, unlike El Chapo, Escobar's family wasn't struggling financially. He was one of 7 kids and grew up surrounded by narcotics, particularly marijuana and cocaine. It didn't take long for Escobar to recognize the financial opportunity they presented, especially when it came to selling cocaine to Americans, who were quickly embracing it with a passion. Although their upbringings were different, both El Chapo and Pablo Escobar saw the potential in the illegal drug trade and were determined to make a name for themselves in the criminal underworld. Rise to powers of the bosses. Let's dive deeper into El Chapo's rise to power. Born into poverty, he had to start working at a young age to help support his family. He dropped out of school and began working full-time with his father on their small farm. But El Chapo had bigger dreams and knew he needed to find a more lucrative business. At the age of 15, he started selling marijuana to make some extra cash. It didn't take long for him to realize the potential of the drug trade, and he quickly climbed the ranks of the Mexican cartels. In the 1970s, El Chapo began working for a cartel that was part of an alliance formed by Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino. The Godfather was a mastermind at organizing the drug trade, and the alliance moved enough cocaine to keep Wall Street bankers partying for the next millennium. During this time, El Chapo proved himself to be trustworthy and not afraid to use violence when necessary. When the Godfather was eventually arrested, a power vacuum was created in the Mexican drug trade. Various cartels, including the Sinaloa Cartel, wanted the best roads to get their Colombian coke into the booming U.S. market. The DA knew that taking out a boss would only lead to more violence and little interruption to the flow of drugs. With the Godfather gone, bodies started piling up, and the violence became incredibly brutal. People were getting sawn in half with chainsaws, and heads literally rolled in the streets. In 1995, El Chapo's associate was arrested, and he finally had the opportunity to take control of the Sinaloa Cartel. He was just 38 years old at the time, but his meteoric rise from a cattle farmer to a drug lord was complete. He quickly made the Sinaloa Cartel the most powerful in all of Mexico, with cops and politicians in his pockets. He even managed to bribe his way out of prison multiple times, which only added to his legend and power. As Escobar's wealth grew, so did his empire. He started hiring young men from his hometown, Riongro, and training them to work for him. He set up laboratories in the jungle to produce cocaine and smuggled it out of Colombia via planes, boats, and even submarines. He expanded his reach to other countries in South America and established connections with American and European dealers. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, he entered the United States market, where cocaine was becoming increasingly popular among celebrities and Wall Street brokers alike. To protect his operation, Escobar used a mix of bribery, intimidation, and violence. He had a network of corrupt police officers, politicians, and judges who would turn a blind eye to his activities. He also had a private army of hitmen known as sicarios who carried out his orders without hesitation. Escobar was not afraid to use extreme violence to get what he wanted. He was responsible for countless bombings, assassinations, and massacres, including the bombing of a commercial airliner in 1989 that killed 107 people. Despite his brutal tactics, Escobar was seen as a hero by many Colombians who admired his rags to riches story and his Robin Hood-like reputation. He built schools, hospitals, and soccer fields in poor neighborhoods and was known to give money to those in need. He portrayed himself as a patriot who was fighting against the corrupt Colombian government and the United States, which he saw as an imperialist force. But the reality was that Escobar's cocaine empire was causing chaos and violence throughout Colombia and beyond. He was at war with rival cartels, the Colombian government, and even the United States. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration launched a massive manhunt to capture him, offering a reward of $2 million for information leading to his arrest. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to the Colombian authorities, but he was allowed to build his own prison, La Catedral, where he continued to run his empire from behind bars. But the government soon realized their mistake in allowing Escobar to remain in charge. In 1992, they tried to transfer him to a regular prison, but he escaped before they could do so. This sparked a massive manhunt that lasted for over a year and involved the Colombian and U.S. governments working together. In December 1993, Escobar was finally tracked down and killed by Colombian police in a shootout in Medellin. The clans of the mafia leader. El Chapo's rise to power in the late 90s was marked by his involvement in the methamphetamine trade, a drug that was gaining popularity with Americans. The drug's affordability and its ability to keep users awake for extended periods made it a hit with video gamers and house cleaners alike. El Chapo saw an opportunity to produce the drug himself in meth labs, bypassing the Colombians and moving it straight into the U.S. This move catapulted him to the top of the drug trafficking world, earning him the moniker the New Godfather. With control over cartels in many states in Mexico, he wielded immense power, which only grew after his prison break in 2001, which reportedly cost him a mere $2.5 million. However, peace was short-lived, and the cartel's alliance soon broke down, plunging Mexico into one of the bloodiest turf wars ever seen. Thousands of people, including innocent civilians, women, and children, were caught in the violence that ensued. In the midst of it all, El Chapo somehow managed to stay on top, thanks in part to his cooperation with the DEA. He was wanted in the U.S., but his indictment was dropped for a time because of his assistance to the authorities. The violence continued, with people being tortured, cut to pieces, beheaded, and even having their faces stitched onto soccer balls and returned to their cartel. El Chapo's reign of terror would come to an end, but not before he had established himself as one of the most ruthless and powerful drug lords the world had ever seen. The stories of Pablo Escobar and El Chapo are the stuff of legend, their names synonymous with the drug trade, power, and ruthless violence. But while both men were notorious, they were not equal. Escobar was the undisputed king, his reach and influence unparalleled. His gang, the Medellin Cartel, was responsible for the deaths of as many as 4,000 people during their cocaine dealing days, taking out politicians, lawyers, and even blowing up an airplane carrying a presidential candidate, killing 107 people. Escobar's power was greater than anything El Chapo would ever have. He was the true king of coke, while El Chapo was merely a flash in the pan. Escobar created the cocaine trafficking business, while the Mexican gangs were merely buying their cocaine or being paid to move it for them. Despite the high murder rate in Medellin, Escobar was seen as a kind of Robin Hood figure, giving a significant amount of cash to poor communities and building up infrastructure like schools and hospitals. And while Escobar's violence was extreme, it was not close to what would later happen in Mexico. Unlike the Mexican cartels, Escobar had control over the cocaine trade and did not have to fight off a large number of competing cartels. He ran his business like a well-oiled machine, using fear and bribes to maintain his control. He famously gave officials the choice between Plata o Plomo, silver or lead, and it was a very real offer. The Colombian authorities had every right to be fearful of this powerful man. He could bribe or take out anyone, no matter how high they were in their particular office. At one point, Escobar was getting around 15 tons of cocaine into the US every single day, making something like $26 billion a year for the cartel. Forbes even put Escobar down as one of the richest men in the world with a net worth of $30 billion. He truly was the king. Who is better? The rise and fall of drug lords like Pablo Escobar and El Chapo highlight the never-ending cycle of drug trafficking and violence. While Escobar was the mastermind behind the business of cocaine and a notorious figure in Colombia's history, his death didn't stop the drug trade. Instead, it shifted to other cartels like the Cali Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. El Chapo's arrest didn't change things either, as the drug trade continues to flourish in Mexico and beyond. Comparing Escobar and El Chapo reveals the never-ending cycle of the drug trade. The war on drugs cannot be won because these drug lords are just a small part of a larger problem. Thank you for watching another amazing video from our true crime team. Like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned to our next real-life true crime video.